in terms of the actual wrestling content, in terms of the in-ring action, I have no real issue with the quality right now. It's like I said, it's the best overall it's been in a long time.
It's just the booking.
Even guys like which we'll get to in a second, but even guys like Orton always puts on a solid match. It's just that he puts on the same match against the same guys. That's the problem. You've seen Orton versus Cena a billion times. With that said, though, we are a month out from WrestleMania, and there's only 2 matches really set on the card. So on Raw last week, you had it was confirmed. It was rumored for a while that it'd be Brock Lesnar, who Brock Lesnar the past 2 years has been a really part-time guy who's wrestled maybe 3 or 4 times a year, show up on maybe 10 Raws a year, you know, but he comes out, gets a huge pop, still wrestles really well. He's scary still.
I have no idea why anyone likes that guy.
He's scary.
He is.
He really is.
Yeah, I've just never felt. I've never seen the appeal.
He threw a monitor. You know how they you know, that they take the monitors up for. He F5 Mark Henry on the table on Raw like he was nothing. He gets so into it. He threw the monitor so far it bounced and then went into the crowd. So no,
holy shit.
He's a you don't want to. He fought in the UFC.
I know he did.
With tuberculosis or whatever. I think I said it correctly. That the intestinal disease, and still became champion. And it was a weak heavyweight division at the time, but he still became champion and defended it. You know, and just to do that was very tough. And then, you know, no, Lesnar's a monster, and he was a real amateur wrestler, a champion. So I mean, so he's against Undertaker. Will that be a good match? I don't know.
I don't see that being a good match.
Undertaker's match last year against CM Punk, I still have to see. But then CM Punk can drag a guy to a good match. He's like Bret Hart that way. He can drag a guy to a match. But afterwards, I did see when he stuck around for about a month afterwards and wrestled for a few times. Undertaker, he looked terrible. The last maybe 2 years before that, he really wasn't showing his age. The guy's got to be close to 50 by now.
Yeah.
And now he's showing. I
think he's 49. Yeah.
He showed his age. Like, you know how he does the jumping, the jumping clothesline where he goes over the guy. He can't get over the guy anymore.
Yeah.
He can't. So he's going to be against Brock. I think that'll be decent, just because Brock Lesnar usually doesn't have a bad match. But then again, I don't think he's the type of guy that can carry a guy to a good match. But at least Undertaker has never really had one of these bad matches in a long time. Because there's only one match a year. They make it special. So that said, that match is set. The other match, unfortunately, it's still set, which is going to change. And I'll tell you why in a second. Batista versus Orton, which no one wants to see.
No.
No one wanted to see it from the time Batista came back. We spoke about it before at Royal Rumble. Because Batista comes back, hasn't been there for 4 years, not in wrestling shape, not as big as he used to be, probably because they are drug testing more, part of the reason why. He looks like just a rat. He's in shape. He's in great shape. Physically, not ring shape. But there's nothing special about the guy. He doesn't put on good matches. He doesn't have a great moveset. He doesn't have great ring psychology.
He never did.
That's the problem. And now he's 45. He's not a young guy either.
When he came in the first time,
like
he was an easy character to root against, and he had the basic big man moveset. Right?
Well, he was in Evolution when he came in too.
Yeah,
he was just a silent killer of Evolution.
And he had
Ric Flair, Randy Orton, who was very young at the time. He was like 23 at the time. Triple H and Batista.
So he had a very basic big man moveset. He could work a match, but it wasn't great. But I've heard that since he left and he's come back, and I've heard now that he's older, he basically has all those things which become massive negatives when you blow up in like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Like, I've heard he's just got no stamina.
He got gassed in the Royal Rumble and he didn't even do anything. Like I said, for a guy coming back in the Royal Rumble, like when John Cena came back the 1 year, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago from injury and won it, he at least comes back as a force and throws guys out. Batista threw like 1 or 2 guys out barely, and the rest of the time he's in the corner like this, just like going for breath. And I told you how he threw out Roman Reigns was just terrible.
Yeah.
It was the most uneventful way to get thrown out. Oh, got him for the hair. Oh, he reverses it, gets the hair and throws him out. And then the crowd just turned against it. The problem is that the fans booed it heavily, we said, at Royal Rumble, so much so because Daniel Bryan wasn't even in the Rumble. And so he was booed. WWE tried to drown out the boos by putting his music up. But after a few weeks, they said they have to. So they finally turned him heel last week on SmackDown. And the way they turned him heel was like saying he's basically now making fun of Daniel Bryan, who's now the #1 face in the company, even more than John Cena. He's finally eclipsed him because they're giving him that push finally. But they're saying, I come back and you have Daniel Bryan in the Yes Movement, and he's not a real wrestler, going about the size thing, which is what the fans really think. And so they're actually now putting that into it. They said, no, I'm here, I'm going to be the champion and just deal with it. Now it makes sense. The only problem is now for sure. Then there's no way they're gonna have Orton versus Batista because you don't have a heel versus heel match ever. I've seen it maybe one time on Raw 10 years ago when Angle was a heel versus another guy, and the crowd couldn't care less. And Angle, because Angle is one of the all-time greats now. I do say that knowing that he hasn't been wrestling a huge amount of time, 13 years, 14 years. Angle turned the crowd and basically started wrestling as a face during the match because he realized the crowd was dead.
That's what I was going to say. Heel versus heel only works when you have charismatic heels like Angle or The Rock, where they can actually shift the opinion of the crowd during the match.
But that is still extremely rare, though, because you have to have... The crowd has to be behind at least one person. Face versus face is probably my favorite because you have everyone rooting for one or the other. That's the best. But so what's going to happen is this. If CM Punk was not on Raw, that's a whole other issue we'll get to in a second. If CM Punk's not inserted into this, which looks like now CM Punk is going to be gone forever, but Daniel Bryan has to be inserted into this as a triple threat. He has to be. Otherwise, there's no one else they can put into that match and have it make sense.
Right.
And come out at least as the champion probably. So the only other rumored match right now is Daniel Bryan's been trying to challenge Triple H to a match the past couple weeks because he's been screwed out of the title 2 or 3 times. Really 3 times he's been screwed out of the title, going back to SummerSlam, where he got screwed out of winning the title. He got screwed. The next month, he got screwed the next night. The decision was reversed, and the title was held up, and then screwed out of Elimination Chamber when Kane came in and cost Bryan the title against Orton in Elimination Chamber. So now he wants the title against Triple H. Triple H is saying, no, you're not my league. You're a B-plus player. I'm not going to lace my boots up for a B-plus player, which works great as a heel. I don't like that still because it kind of still buries the guy, which even subconsciously, but whatever. So I think what they're going to do is they're probably going to have some sort of stipulation, have that as the first or second match of the night.
Yeah, Bryan against Triple H.
It says, okay, you don't want to match with me? Yeah.
Bryan beats Triple H and gets inserted as a 3-way.
And he's inserted into 3-way. He's beat up from Triple H. But
that legitimizes his win in the 3-way, too. Because generally when you look at a triple threat match, no one wants to win that because there can be all sorts of ways. They don't necessarily look... Well, it's just not a one-on-one match.
It's not as clean, unless you beat the champion.
Right. So I think to insert him in there is beaten up will lend credibility to him potentially winning the title.
Yeah, it'll help.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, WWE never does triple threat eliminations where you have to beat 2 guys to win. They usually just do the first pinfall or submission wins.
Yeah, I always...
Which I don't like, but then again, 10 years ago, Benoit did tap out the champion Triple H and win at MSG. So
yeah.
It was great because of that. Shawn Michaels wasn't anywhere near the ring. He was thrown out of the ring to screw it up. So I think that's what's going to happen. Unless CM Punk somehow comes back. But CM Punk was not at Raw in Chicago, which is in his hometown.